All right, Stay Spiritual audience, we got another special guest with us this week. We got Hans Christian Lundholm. He's a fellow YouTuber. He's an author, and he talks a lot about non-duality, enlightenment, and I think a big part of his channel is about asking the right questions.
Remember before not too long ago, we would be like, we gotta meet some of these enlightened people. We gotta, and now they're like coming out of the woodwork. We're finding them, so it's just cool, you know? Hope you guys are interested in that too.
Yeah, it's exciting. So, yeah, without further ado, Hans Christian Lundholm. So, well, thanks for making the time to come on the show for us. This is great. We have a lot of questions for you. I've been following your channel for a while now, and I thought maybe for our audience, a good place to begin might be to just tell us a little bit about the Hans Christian Lundholm YouTube channel.
Yes. The channel, or about me?
Well, I thought maybe a little bit of both. You know, yeah.
Okay. So, yeah. Why am I doing what I am doing on my YouTube channel? Mostly because I can't do it. I cannot not do it. I have something within me that simply wants to get out. And I have been doing it for 4 or 5 years here in Denmark, in Danish. And then suddenly one day I had this idea that I might start doing this in English, but I was not sure that my English language, my English vocabulary were good enough to do it. So I just started recording a few videos, and I said to myself, this is fine. This is going to be just okay. And in some sense, it doesn't matter that the English is not perfect. So that's basically it. I have this message, and it came to me 15 years ago. And now we are going into the story about Hans Christian Lundholm. I like the way that you pronounced it. By the way, I cannot remember who is James and who is Justin.
I'm James, and this is my brother Justin.
Hello.
Okay, fine. So James, the way you were pronouncing Hans Christian Lundholm, I know that is difficult. That is tough. But anyway, until 15 years ago, I was living in what we can consider being a normal Western life. I was doing my best to succeed the way that we were told that we have to succeed. So that is basically with business, social status, all of that. And I was I have had a couple of companies myself, running those companies, and I in a traditional sense I was actually quite successful money-wise. It was going okay, but there was something else that was bothering me. There was this creeping sense that I was never going to arrive in a place where I felt satisfied, no matter how much money I would get. And frustration was building through a lot of years. And then I guess it's almost the classic story with too much drinking, alcohol, trying to cope with stress, self-medication with alcohol, primarily alcohol. And at that time, I knew absolutely nothing about spirituality. I am a Christian, but I have never, the way Christianity is being shared in churches, I have a hard time resonating with it. But somehow, when I think back, I can remember that I knew that love has something to do with it, but that was not the obvious message in the church. So I was not religious. And if somebody at that time had asked me about spirituality, I would probably had said that that is something with crystals or tarot cards or something like that. I knew absolutely nothing about non-duality or spirituality. Then one very lovely evening in late November 2008, I was walking around here in my house, frustrated again, restless, and again I had this urge to reach out for a bottle of red wine, but also I knew this is not good. So instead, I reached out for a book that was in my shelf. And it was actually a book I had bought 3 or 4 years earlier. And I had read it before, but it meant nothing to me before. But I picked this book up out and I sat in my bed and I started reading. And then suddenly, boom, it was at suddenly it dawned, and it was completely clear to me that I was unable to define who I am in my thinking, in concepts, all of that thinking about thinking and ruminating. Nothing of that could ever define who I am. And in that instant, all of my struggle, all of my problems, they simply fell to the ground. I still had tasks to do, but the energy was completely shifted. And I remember that evening, I fell asleep and I slept the best that I had slept in many, many years. And then the next day, I woke up and everything was changed. And for the next, I guess, 6 months or something like that, I was just walking around, walking in the forest, walking at the beach, and like born again. And everything was just so beautiful. I was talking to the trees, and it was so strange because I was a completely different human being at that point. And I sometimes I say, if the human being I was before, if that human being had met me, the person I was just 14 days later, the human being that I was would have run away screaming. Yeah. So everything opened up, and from then on, I had to find out. Okay, I am not the human being that I thought I was. Well, who am I? And that was the journey the next 4 or 5 years, I guess. And I was writing a lot. Epiphany after epiphany came, and I wrote it down, and then suddenly one day I had a pile of paper, and I made that into a book, in a Danish book. And then I started recording videos in the Danish language, and I started a YouTube channel in Denmark. And there was some resonance, as there were people who were resonating with the message. But as I said earlier, after some years, I thought that I will have to try to do this in English. And then I started the English YouTube channel August last year, I think. And it seems to be going okay.
It's going great. Like, I found you.
Yeah.
I've watched it grow exponentially, like,
Yeah.
especially just even recently. And when you said you had like this feeling to release your story, it probably comes from a place of relatability, because everything you said about your life there in the beginning seems to be something that a lot of people, I imagine, resonate as they try to grind out their existence in survival mode. And then you talk about kind of this epiphany, or this thing that happened to you. The first thing that kind of came to my mind was kind of I don't know who's coined this term, maybe it was us or someone else, but this idea of spontaneous enlightenment. Or was it something that gradually grew, or was it something that hit you immediately in that moment?
I would say it's both. But firstly, I'm not really that fond of the word enlightenment.
Awakening?
Yeah, awakening is better. I know I use the word enlightenment in some of my videos, but and some of the titles, but to tell the truth, I actually hate doing the titles to my YouTube videos, because if nobody watches them if they don't have some kind of drama within them. And
keyword searches. Yeah, I know. I hear you. I hear you.
I hate it.
Why doesn't the truth suffice?
But that's how it is. Okay, was it sudden or gradually? Well, it was both. The awakening was sudden, and for perhaps for a month or two, I thought that this is it. Everything is gone. But the conditioning of the mind is deep-seated. So slowly some conditionings is re-emerging, and then I had to look into that, examine it. What's the belief system that is hiding behind this conditioning? And you have to dig very deep sometimes to find the beliefs that are hiding underneath. And then I discovered also that suffering is a kind of an alarm bell. So I came to learn about it became possible for me to recognize, okay, there is suffering now. Why is there suffering? And then I learned to welcome when there was suffering, because that was it told me there is something I need to look into. There is something hiding deep down in the psyche. And then again, I was making this self-inquiry into myself, diving into the deep of the psyche, and then unraveling, now uncovering these belief systems. So there was a sudden awakening, and it was a kind of awakening where there were no way back. That was impossible. So the awakening was the character of the awakening was such that I could no longer lie to myself. I could when I try when I lied or when I tried to fool myself, there were pain instantly. And so for me there was only one way, and that was to dig into the psyche, to uncover everything, to learn about when something happens, these feelings emerges. Why does that happen? When I am in this social situations, this happens. These thoughts arises. Why? So I was continually uh, investigating deep into myself, and that was very intense for 3, perhaps 4 years. Um, and after that, the journey sort of took a new turn, because I had somewhat isolated myself from social engagements, and meditating, being on my own, uh, going out to social situations, trigger something within me, and then back again and meditate on it, what is happening. But at some stage, I realized that I cannot just go and hide. I have to come back into, and I know that a lot of this investigation into myself is similar in all of us. So I knew that I had something to give back. This this feeling, this deep feeling of freedom. Um, I simply could not keep it to myself. I could not just isolate me somewhere and just sit there. I had to give it back, and that was basically why I started sharing. I had to see if there was someone who wants to listen, who could benefit from it, who could help them move on. Uh, so 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 this feeling of I need to give back. That is the energy, and that is why I said initially that I cannot not do it, because to me it feels somewhat egoic just to sit there blissed out in my own peace. This is not my peace. I cannot claim that this is my peace. This is everybody's peace. So I have to give back. So sudden or gradual, both. I would call it clearing up afterwards, and a sudden awakening and then clearing up afterwards.
Yeah.
And to some extent, there is still some clearing up going on, even 15 years later. And I'm very sure that it will never end, and it doesn't matter.
And it correlates to many stories I've heard that are similar to yours, that do have kind of a sudden beginning, and then afterwards, it brings to mind Eckhart Tolle for the first year sitting on park benches, and then people being like, "What's up with you?" and him going, "I don't know," and then going and finding out about enlightenment afterwards, right? And another hallmark is sometimes I find is that people that I guess we would regard as awakened, like yourself, sometimes having issue with some of the language, like enlightening and stuff like that. Right before the show started, I said, I wonder if a better term than awakening would be not sleepening. You know what I mean? Like, just sometimes you got to get at it from a different angle, it seems, because the whatever your idea is the hindrance to, which leads me, I guess, to my question, which is, from your perspective, what is the hindrance to people that actually care about this, are interested to know, what is the hurdle here that they must get over? other than the obvious one, which is a belief about it.
In many ways, it is a leap of faith, because in the awakening, everything that you had thought was real, everything that you had based your life upon until that point, all of that crumbles, all of that falls to the ground. So the mind very easily gets scared. It wants it so bad. I think at one time I have read somewhere someone said it's like just like a moth approaching the flame of a candle, and the moth feels attracted to the flame of the candle, and it wants it so bad, but when it touches, it burns up and dies. And that's the same in the awakening. All of the ideas we had about what existence is, who we are, what life is, what we are supposed to do, what love is, all of that evaporates, and the mind very easily gets scared just there at the precipice, taking the final step. Because the mind wants something to cling to, something to hold on to. So I think this tendency to be to fear is the final step. The mind fears the final step. It is a leap of faith. And in that sense, it is very important that there are as many humans sharing this message, because the more humans sharing a similar message helps to build trust that even though in the awakening everything collapses, there is something on the other side. I don't know what it is. I cannot know. It is impossible to know what it is on the other side, but there is something on the other side. And these humans that are sharing this message, and even I cannot tell exactly what it is that is on the other side.
Right.
Because then we are back into the conceptual belief systems again.
But hard not to turn stuff into a belief, correct?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
You know, even if you start talking about a collective awakening that would be beneficial to humanity, it's like, but
Absolutely.
don't get attached to the idea of benefit, and don't get attached to the idea of this and that, right? For this leapless leap of faith.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just...
No, that's perfect. Otherwise, I just might be talking endlessly.
Well, I find like when I am listening to you, you are like a meditation.
Tranquil.
When I like, I feel like a good practice when listening to your content would be to like set up a cushion, put some nice meditation music on, listen to you, and then when you're done, just stay there for about like 15, 30 minutes after.
Yeah. Yes. You could lie down, and even your talks that are kind of touching on conceptual ideas, they are, as James was saying, like some others I've found, but definitely yourself also, are like a meditation and put you in. It does spread through that medium. So
yeah. But I think that's the optimal way of listening to it. So just sitting in quiet, yes, like a meditation. And you are not the only one who have said that. There are others who have written to me that they are listening to one of my talks before they go to sleep, for example. So and it's wonderful. Absolutely. So, and that is what I mean by giving back. Um, this awakening can happen gradually. We do not. It does not have to be an explosive awakening. A gradual awakening is just fine. And Justin, you were talking about this collective awakening, and as I see it, it will happen. The only thing that can prevent that is a complete annihilation of the human race,
Right.
which is, I think, is unlikely to happen. Something else, something very devastating, might happen. I don't know, but the collective awakening will happen.
What
Then
if
the question is,
nature knows what if Mother Nature knows what it's doing, and in this 11th hour, instead of annihilation as some people fear, maybe as you said, there'll be a collective awakening. That would be
yeah,
that you know
Sounds
I,
like
I like that story.
yeah.
yeah, I do too. But on the other hand, when I do these, I shoot these videos. I don't have an expectation that something is happening right now, or uh, and 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 the real benefit from the videos that I am shooting might be in 300 years or something like that. And again, it doesn't matter to me because I am life. And if the human race has not annihilated itself in 300 years, there will be human life. And that means that I, life, will still be there, benefiting from what
Right.
I, life, is doing right now.
That's brilliant.
So
Yeah.
but of course, there will be a lot of suffering until this collective awakening. But in some sense, it is the suffering that is the catalyst for.
Sorry, I'm
Yeah.
I'm so excited. I apologize.
Shoot.
It's interesting to think of the suffering almost as like, you've talked about the human ego being a little bit like programming, and it's like, imagine a program that's designed to go around saying I'm suffering, in regards to, like, it's an illusion within like complaining about an illusion. Sometimes I get that sense, right? Which leads me to kind of an odd question I have, which is, I do notice that your character is tranquil, and I've noticed that among a lot of awakened folks, as they seem very calm. They seem to radiate calmness and love and all this stuff. And with some of the work both me and James here have done, which involves meditating and spending hours in contemplation, I have gotten the sense before of entering into a more tranquil state, a little more detached, less identification with the ego. And then the tricky thing I find is when I go out into the world, is the garb that I put back on is both my own mental conception of like what an identity is, but it's also like coupled with the way my physicality is. I don't believe that the ego is comprised solely of like my mental character, but it also is like how much proclivity towards anxiety or all these things. So sometimes I'll be trying to communicate a message and I'll be like real animated and projecting strong emotions. And I'm like, this is getting in the way of what I'm really trying to say. Like, I'm making people hostile. So, but then sometimes if you change your character, which I've done, like I've gone to social events and be like, I'm going to put on the character of a more chilled out person. There's an aspect of that feels to me as like, is this really me though? And are people taking this in as somebody who's not panicky, or are they seeing it as like a pretension on my side of things? So I guess the question is, what's with that hangover of just the old typical ego that you see that you're wearing like a mask, you know what I mean? But you're like, it doesn't seem to embody that tranquility that other people who are clearly had a shift in their consciousness display. I don't know. That was complicated. I apologize.
I think I got it. Let's see. Patience.
Right.
Patience. Yeah. Impatience, that is the ego. It wants to control. It wants to be in control of it. And just in those two different scenarios that you were describing, none of those scenarios is you.
Right. Right. That's that I don't get. That's the part I don't quite get yet.
None of those scenarios is you, because the first scenario where you are kind of excited, that's a part of the human ego that wants to succeed so badly. So we get all emotional and geared up to and then we start to be a little afraid to do. How will it work out? Does I succeed? And I have to remember this. I have to remember this. And then, because we need to remember the stuff, we start talking faster and faster and faster. So that's the first.
It's like insecure
scenario.
and frantic.
Yeah. And then the other scenario, that's also true. That is not you either. I would say that it, in some sense, is closer to who you are than the first. What happens is that I also used to be fast speaking. And early on, I learned that if the energy level within me, if I allow that to raise, then at some point it triggers old conditionings. And then this conditioning takes over and just simply starts to run the game again. So what's going on inside of me is that I don't know if I can say that I am monitoring myself, but I am being aware. I'm not losing myself within the talking. It's kind of like I'm sitting here and just watching Hans Christian talking, and if I notice that Hans Christian is starting to get emotional and starting to speak faster and faster, then I have a simple little dial say, slow down. No need to hurry. We are not in a hurry here. Just take it easy. And then the peace is there, reestablished. And also, when I'm doing the videos, I'm not trying to remember anything when I'm shooting the videos, recording them. I just simply sit down in front of the camera, turn on the camera, and then I sit and wait. And usually it takes 1 or 2 minutes, and then a sentence suddenly emerges within the mind. And then I speak this sentence, and from there, everything just simply flows. And I am only verbalizing what I am experiencing, what comes to me. So there is no need for me to try to remember anything. There is no need to, there is no anxiety with it, because somehow what I'm saying is just emerging. It's just appearing. It is somehow, I'm somehow just making myself available. And then I say, okay, use me for something. I'm here, use me. I want to give back. And then I sit quiet, and then a sentence comes and I say it, and then it just goes. So I don't know if that was really an answer to your question.
That was a beautiful answer, and I do believe that kind of an answer transmits something to the listener, because they see an example even just cognitively, how you put that together of how they might be able to something. I believe within people can recognize that and get clued into what you're talking about. As a side answer or as a side question, I would just say sometimes it feels, and this kind of goes with the first thing I said. Sometimes it seems as though I can get some distance from the ego, or start to get a little more objective view of what's going on with the mind. But the body seems to be a whole nother thing. And the last awakened person we had on here, I asked them similar about, can the body processes change after awakening? Like, can healing happen? This sort of thing. But for you, I guess I'll pose it like this. First of all, do you believe that it's possible to harbor trauma within the body, like holding patterns of emotions within the body? And second of all, what is to be done about that? What kind of communication could be done? Because I get the sense that you can get the idea that there's nothing to hurry to. There's nothing to be rushing around or conjuring more emotions about. But for some people, I get the sense that their base emotional state is kind of chaotic from harboring that in the body. What could you say about that?
Well, I will say that spiritual bypassing, that is a concept where we come to believe that meditation, spirituality can heal everything. And then we have a paradox here, because it can heal everything, but it does not necessarily happen as fast as we would like. So some people who are traumatized, if it is really a hindrance in everyday life, they definitely need to seek traditional medicine, traditional, what's it called?
Therapy?
Yeah, therapy, or even I would say even the help of modern medication could be beneficial, because yes, trauma in the body. Trauma in the body does not necessarily evaporates with an awakening. And a long time after an awakening, there can still be trauma in the body. But the relationship we have with the trauma, the relationship that we have with ourselves, becomes different. And this piece will make the trauma become less and less. But as I said, if it is very severe, it is important to seek traditional help, because otherwise we might end up in, yes, what is called spiritual bypassing, where we're just sitting there meditating, and in reality it is the ego trying to control the trauma in the body.
Right.
And that is impossible. It might even get worse, because the trauma is actually the fight and flight mechanism that is kind of stuck in anxiety mode, and if we try to control that, the mind might think that it is that something is trying to prevent it from protecting the organism, and then we start with this battle within ourselves, and that is what I call spiritual bypassing, and that is not good. So healing trauma in the body, again, patience. Okay. We need to calm down everything within us. And as everything settles down, the trauma will lessen, and our relationship with the trauma will change. We might even begin to see the trauma as something that could be helping me to awaken. Because there is a lot of suffering within the trauma. And we tend to carry a lot of ideas about. Also, there is often a lot of, what's that called, when you criticize yourself? What would you call that? Criticize yourself for not being good enough.
Oh, insecurities, just
Just
negative
simply
self-talk.
no blaming.
Right.
There's often a lot of self-blame involved in trauma. Why am I unable to control this? Why?
Yeah.
And 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 that's actually the ego that is blaming itself. But the ego cannot do anything about the trauma.
Right.
The trauma that needs to be, the healing is coupled with the ability to lower the intensity and the cultivating the peace within meditation and meeting ourselves with love, with forgiveness, with understanding, with there can be a lot of reasons for why the trauma is appearing, has happened. And when we investigate into it, often it is possible to find out that it has all just been something that was out of my hands. It was a part of this life, a part of what has happened. So, and then we can stop self-blame, and that is also important. So I I actually think that a lot of those who are interested in spirituality, a lot of them are actually traumatized in some way or another.
It
And it
reminds
is
me
the
of, sorry, it
yeah,
reminds
okay.
me kind of Jesus's relationship with the, like, I didn't come to save these Pharisees and scribes and people that claim to have it together. I came for the sinners type thing.
Yeah,
And then as you were talking, it reminded me a little bit about what he said in terms of fertile or lush ground for the truth to fall on sometimes, like
yeah,
sometimes, like one of the things I'm guilty of doing is going around and thinking because my experience is this way, then other people must be deceiving me to not say that there's that way. But I liked everything that you said there in terms of like meeting yourself where you're actually at and being careful of things like spiritual bypass. There was something we went to recently where it was a get together with a bunch of people, and I spent most of the time trying to meditate, and I got to this point where I'd realized just individually my own situation, a lot of who I am and my impulse to be or say certain things came from a sort of what I would regard as a trauma in terms of a life fraught with, hey, get up, do this, go do this. What are you doing? Why are you acting like that? Like my whole identity is being puppeteered by other people's ideas of how a person should be. And so that gets into, and some people aren't like that. They wouldn't have developed necessarily their ego that way. And even if they did it wouldn't have gotten into their like body. I noticed that my body was jumpy from
yeah, yeah,
from being that way.
yes,
And so I do think that maybe sometimes the appropriate thing to explore would be safe medicine for that if it's really bad, or like because it's not. I think you can enter into a realm of delusion if you're just like, well, it turns out I have to meditate 24 hours a day alone just so I can sit there and observe my trauma behaving in my body.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
there may be more means that need to be taken to like deal with that physiology.
Hans,
yeah,
a big part of your YouTube channel is about asking the right questions.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
for people who are beginning this journey, what are maybe like, a few of those questions that they would be good starter questions to be asking?
Yeah, in as a the most obvious of the questions, they are somewhat now what's it called when something is said over and over again?
Repeating.
Uh, no, the right questions I prefer is when I am with another human being, and then the right question would be the right question to what I sense in that particular human being. Otherwise, the right question is, who am I?
Yeah.
But everybody has heard that, and
Yeah.
yeah. So, and then the right questions could also be aimed at trying to end up in a state where you no longer have any answers and just simply sitting there, and all answers are gone. And then just suddenly it might dawn on you that this do not need any answer. This is completely independent of any answer. So
It's actually found in not knowing.
in knowing that it is impossible to know conceptually what is going on, and when that is seen clearly, then we can start using concepts. We can have a dialogue, we can talk, but this rigid energy is no longer within the language, within the dialogue, because it is known that no concept can hold truth, ultimate truth. But asking the right questions, I'm not sure that I answer that. What would be the right question? Let's see, Justin, you have been the one who have been talking mostly. What could a good question to you be? Just a moment.
I can't wait.
Okay, let's go back. Go back to the scenario where you were describing that when you're doing a presentation, you were like this, and then you try to be more cool and more calm, and then you try to be that. So a question could be, how could you be any of those if you are able to shift from one to another?
Correct.
And then back again?
Yeah.
How could you be any of those?
But sometimes I'm known for kind of going, and everybody wants to make small talk, and I want to talk about deep things or something.
Yeah.
And so a idea I've put out there is everybody's identity is a fiction. I'm going to talk like Matthew McConaughey for the rest of the, I'm just going to be someone different. That's how surface this is. And so I'm crazy enough that I'll actually do that. I do it on the show. Sometimes I wear makeup. Sometimes I get, I'll dress in my PJs and pretend like what I think enlightenment is.
But that is perfect. That is just you having fun.
Yes.
And
yes.
you know it. Yeah. You're just acting out, and that is perfect. It is so important to be able to make fun. Otherwise, this spirituality, it tends to become very serious.
Yeah.
So yeah, and so it is very important. So that's perfect, Justin. Play those roles.
I think
but
so.
Then afterwards, when you put the roles to the side, ask yourself, what is not a role?
What's left?
Yeah.
Well, so that's the
What is
problem
not
for
a
me.
role?
If I'm being honest, sometimes the issue is that I can try out some different identities, and you know, I think it's worth it sometimes to shake up social situations and norms and stuff like that. But I think that the issue sometimes is that when you do stop and you're like, okay, well, what's left? Okay, I've toyed with all these identity things. I've been willing to give things up. I've been willing to take things on for a while. What is left at the end of it? And oftentimes people say, well, what's left is like an they'll get poetic about it and be like, there's this infinite well of love and beauty. And that's where I would say my ego sneaks in through the back door and fits into that spot and doesn't let me identify with that, and instead finds a way to be like, no, you're your back pain. No, you are this nervous feeling within you. And I would like to one day, you know, have that not be the identification, and tap into what is often, like I said, poetically talked about by enlightened people as seemingly a beautiful state of being, which is also regarded as like just how it is. You just gotta recognize that it hasn't been anywhere else.
Yeah, but it's perfect. I ask you this question: what is left when everything, all the roles are being put aside? And then you started trying to describe what is left,
Right.
but that is not what you're supposed to do. You this question, what is left, it cannot be answered in words, and you do not even have to answer it towards yourself. Don't look for a description when you ask yourself what is left when all of these roles are put aside. Then just sit, be quiet. Don't expect a conceptual answer. Feel, sense into what is left, and just simply stay there. Stay. And then we can start to poetically describe it, but we know that we will never be able to describe it fully, only with pointers. But actually it is extremely simple, and the conditioned mind hates it for being that simple. Give me something difficult to do. But it is very simple. So what is left? And don't try to answer that question in concepts. If I were to use a concept, I would say something like aliveness. But then I would have to put that concept to the side and then go back and sense directly the aliveness. And the beautiful, that it is so beautiful just to, yes, I am here. I am. And then again, put the concepts aside and then just sit with that. There is aliveness. And that is actually the essence of meditation, just sitting as aliveness, not trying to do anything, not trying to answer any question, just sitting. And then at some stage, it might dawn on the mind, this is what I am. And then the concept away, and then sit again. And then the mind starts to rediscover, I am this aliveness. And then it can ask itself, What is this aliveness? And then we start to use all of those words again. It's peaceful. It's boundless. I cannot find any limit. It's miraculous. This aliveness I am is miraculous. And then the mind discovers that there is not someone who is aliveness. Aliveness is. There is not someone who has this aliveness. The aliveness on this physical level, aliveness is the ground of being. And then just simply stay with that. So, what is left when these roles are put aside? Is that.
Silence.
And this aliveness is able to know itself as aliveness. And then this aliveness notices, it looks at you, James and Justin, and say, aliveness, it's me also. Okay, there is a human being here, and I have a particular role, and I play those social roles, but that's not who I am. And this foundation, aliveness knowing itself, consciousness, we could call it consciousness, knowing itself, that's where the peace comes from. And actually, when I am about to record a video, then as I said before, I just sit down and I simply let everything go away, and then I'm just sitting as that aliveness, and I let that aliveness play out.
Sometimes sometimes I wonder if sometimes contrast plays a big role. Some of us have been on a gradual path, and that might look a little bit different. It makes me think about Ram Dass. I'm not sure if you are familiar with him.
I know the name, but I must admit, I have never read or watched anything about Ram Dass, but I know the name.
Yeah, he's been around since way back, I think like 60s and 70s, and he was a teacher. He's passed now, I believe. Yeah. And but I did catch a talk of his one time where for him he was explaining at the time that it seemed like a gradual change over years of being around spirituality, meditating, and just, I guess inquiry and playing with his state of mind. I think maybe sometimes a big difference can be somebody where, there was a while back where I noticed I was resisting everything. I was existing in resistance, fear of death, fear of losing this, fear of losing that. And there was one day in particular that I decided I'm going to accept everything. I'm going to just do this process of, I don't care how long it takes me. I'm going to search my mind actually for any hidden fears I have and accept them, whatever it is, and state that I accept that it's, And it was a kind of a bizarre practice, but I noticed markedly there was a bunch of relief that had happened to me. Now, that's not the same thing as somebody that has a dramatic transformation from being, drinking too much. Their character's one way, and then boom, an awakening happens, and they're like, you can see the marked difference. That guy was not peaceful like that yesterday. He's changed,
Yeah.
And sometimes I think that's its own thing. Some people have an awakening and then they're so they're hooked hook, line, and sinker to this phenomenon, and that guides all the defragging of their mind and process that happens to come after. For some of us, I think that it's maybe a little more gradual than that, you know, and piece by piece. If you had known me and James here 5-10 years ago, we wouldn't have even probably had the wherewithal to sit patiently and speak for this long.
Yeah,
but
I feel like listening to you is almost an advanced practice, because nowadays everything is instant gratification, and I want it. Give me the information fast.
Yes.
And for someone who comes from that world to tune into maybe some of your content, I could imagine it being like it causing them to stir, because everything has to become fast, and so you have long pauses, and listening to you, like I said earlier, is it's a meditation in itself. Yeah. So anyone who would just randomly stumble across your content, I think they would have to already have a little bit of experience with it.
Or perhaps no experience at all, because sometimes having no experience could actually be an advantage.
Yes, maybe. Yeah. Maybe, yeah.
Because the experience you have put together could be some kind of a belief system, an expectation what is going to happen, and then you're sitting there waiting for that to happen.
And people are craving the type of presence that you bring to the table too. People are craving a simple, tranquil, calm experience, and that is what you bring. And I think that's great. I love the
thank you.
The shift in culture where that's making room for
in a world where everything
like
nowadays seems to be so loud and in your and in your face. Hans, I got to be honest. I've promised my wife, who's like kept my whole house quiet upstairs, that I would try to keep it to an hour. So we've hit that marker. But I know. So I'll grant you one more question. I have one more question that I'll ask after. It's more of like just a interest question. So you ask your question, and then I'll ask mine, and we'll wrap her up.
I don't have another question.
Sorry.
But I will say this much, that we could have another talk another day.
Yes,
some other time. Then we'll do it again. So
yes, that would be amazing. Yes. So see what you.
I just want to say thank you. Thanks for coming, and I'm glad that we've met now. It's great to speak to someone like yourself. So thanks again, and I look forward to the next time we do this.
I wanted to just make note of, even your art is tranquil. I noticed your art.
Beautiful.
I actually really like kind of that you tell me this all the time, that my art is kind of
abstract,
geometric.
With shapes within other shapes, and smaller shapes building larger shapes, and painting the art is my meditation. So I'm just simply doing it because, again, I have to do it. So thank you for.
It's beautiful. I like it. I really like it.
Thank you. Perfect.
Yeah. So maybe just for our audience, I know you've got a book that you've got, a different kind of knowing. Maybe you could let our audience know, where they can find you.
Yes. The book is on Amazon, and right now you can buy it as a paperback or an ebook, and I will record an audio book. But
oh yes, thank you.
Someone wrote me that she would love to hear me reading it as an audiobook, because then I would put in the same energy, and I will do that later this year, but I don't know when. But I will do it. It's on Amazon, and then I have a website, an international website and a Danish website. At this point, there is not much going on the Danish websites. A lot of the Danish people, they have followed me on the international website. But Hans Christian Lundholm, .org, and perhaps if you don't know how that is spelled, then a link in the description or something like that.
Yes, we'll leave links to all your stuff for you.
Perfect.
So Hans, thanks again. This was amazing, great, and I guess all I can say is until next time.
Yeah.
Until next time, we have an agreement. Yes.
All right.